Alright guys, so welcome back to another build guide video, and today it's going to be about Explosive Ballista. As I called it, Big Boom Ballista. So this build is all about using the armed construction node with the tripwire, so that you can proc it like instantly. It does a ton of damage, scales with dexterity, so basically as you go around and you dash around, right, you just cast 2 of your ballistas, and in between them, anything that comes in between will trigger the ballistas so that they explode, or when they when they come at the end of their duration, they will explode as well. So yeah, it's a pretty fun build. It's insane for map clearing. It's okay for bosses. It's not the best, but it's still pretty okay. So yeah, let's go over how the build actually works and go over the skills. So for skills, first of all, Ballista. Ballista is a minion that scales with dexterity, but we're going to make it scale even more with dexterity, with increased area per dexterity and more damage per dexterity. I am not sure if this more damage per dexterity is it's a tooltip error. I think in the patch notes it was supposed to be 1% per dexterity, 1% more damage per dexterity. So yeah, I don't know. This might be bugged. It might be just the tooltip, or it might just not have been fixed. I don't know. All I know is that it works really, really well right now. So yeah, arm construction is the main node for Ballista. We have efficient construction. You need the 2 points in here for the mana cost, because you want to be spamming ballistas all the time, right? And they cost a lot of mana. If you don't have this, you will not be able to spam it as much. We'll go for practical build for 40% more damage. We don't care about the attack speed. 45% of our stats are going to apply to the ballistas. So that is going to be like flat damage, fire damage, physical damage. Like all the increased damage and the flat damage that you are getting are applied to your ballista, but at a reduced ratio. So for every 1 flat, our ballista is getting 0.45 flat. We have more damage here. We have ballistas have 6% base crit chance. So this is going to be, so since they have a base of 5%, plus 6% is going to be 11%, and we're going to see that we're getting more at other places as well, but this is very important. And then all of our critical strike chance and our critical strike multipliers are going to apply to our ballistas as well. So things like increased critical strike chance with a bow will also apply to our ballistas. We have one node here just to get to the flaming shots, which will make it deal a little bit more damage, right, and have fire damage and ignite chance. It's just to get to the explosive delivery, to get to armed construction and grabbing tripwire. So this is going to make our bolts explode and they'll have less attack speed, but we don't really care. Because all we're looking for is the explosion from ballistas, right? And then the tripwire. I mean, the bolts also they also do some damage, and with our gloves, they're gonna shred armor. So they are still pretty good, right? But our main damage source is absolutely gonna be the armed construction node. For shift, we use shift like just as a regular shift with the shurikens to get some armor with shurikens. We're proccing 5 shurikens with this. We're getting the mana efficiency and cooldown recovery speed on shift. We're getting all of the movement speed. We're getting 3 points out of 4. Ideally, you would want to have +1 to shift, probably sealed here, so that you could use all the points in here. Because like mana is going to be your biggest issue with this build. You want as much mana recovery as possible. Invulnerability while shifting, this doesn't seem to work at the moment, but it might be fixed in the future. So if you're watching from the future, this might be fixed. If you're watching at 0.9, it might not be fixed. Who knows? Additional chance to dodge per point of dexterity. We're stacking a lot of dexterity. Every time we use shift, we're getting a short moment where we have like a ton of dodge. So I only have 86 dex right now. You can get up to like upwards of 150 dex if you want. Chance to drop an acid flask on departure. So I want to say that this build is a monolith clear setup that I'm using right now. So that's why I'm using acid flask to give me haste. So Acid Flask, basically, it's only used for haste. These are the only important points. Everything else, it's like just bonus. So just take these 4 points and figure out the rest for yourself. I'm doing some mana efficiency. I'm not even sure if it does use the mana from Acid Flask. I'm not even sure if it does use the mana from Acid Flask to do this. So, anyways. Acid Flask has a chance to slow enemies, fast travels further, and then the frailty chance and the area. Basically, it's like we're only getting this to get haste every time that we shift. So we're getting haste and we're getting the 50% movement speed. Shurikens are used for the armor here, 150% armor because we're getting 5 shurikens on shift. The duration, pierce chance is important to get so that whenever you hit something with your shurikens, they don't disappear and you don't lose the armor that they give you, right? So we're at like 52% armor right now with this. And then we're going for the haste here as well. If you hit at least one enemy, you have haste. So it's just a little bonus that sometimes you'll get haste from this when you run through mobs. Like if you're, for example, if your shift is if your Acid Flask haste is done and you don't have your cooldown here, sometimes you might get another haste just before you can shift again. For Smoke Bomb, we're going for the maximum duration because we want to get as many Dusk Shroud frequency as possible. So Dusk Shroud will increase your chance to receive a glancing blow, and we can get up to 100% chance if you always stay in your Dusk Shroud, right? Of course, we don't have enough duration to make it always 100%. With cooldown on gear you could, but like we don't really have space for that currently. On this build setup, I go for the slow because slow is very good. To kite mobs, I mainly go for the Silver Shroud. Silver Shroud makes you dodge the next attack 100% of the time. Certain attacks cannot be dodged, but most of them can. And this is a very strong buff that you get. So yeah, dodging the next attack and Element Cleanse because I don't have any Element Cleanse right now on my belt. So I cannot cleanse anything on potion use. So that's the main reason. Duration, Dusk Shroud frequency, the slow, and the guaranteed dodge with the Element Cleansing. If you have Cleanse on your belt, you can remove this. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for the skills. And then we're going to go for the planner here because I want to show you guys the ideal setup, basically. This is not completely min-maxed, but it is like a fairly good idea of what you can try to get and what you should aim for. So basically, I put a lot of legendaries here just to show what you can get. If you don't have the legendaries, it doesn't really matter, except for maybe, I'd say Peak of the Mountain. You want one because it gives you a lot of critical strike chance, and you want to get 100% crit on this build. And Death Rattle. Death Rattle adds a lot of damage. You could go for Logi's Hunger as well, but I like generally Death Rattle is just way more damage. Yeah, so okay, let's go over Peak of the Mountain. Peak of the Mountain gives us huge critical strike chance, but it disables our leech from critical strikes. The good thing is we're not leeching anything. Basically, we are relying on potions to heal ourselves and on health regen, like the base health regen that we have, basically, but mainly from potions. So that is why this is so good for ballistas, because ballistas cannot leech for us. So we're going to use this. +5 to all attributes is very good because we're scaling dexterity for more damage and more area. So we want to have all the tier 7s that you want on your gear are going to be tier 7 dexterity. For most pieces, except the relic where you will want +4 levels to ballista. But yeah, dexterity, vitality, armor, and health, increased health. Basically, you're trying to get as tanky as possible because the dexterity will carry all of your damage, basically. For the body armor, I went for a critical strike avoidance and lightning res implicit with tier 7 dexterity, vitality, increased health, and flat armor. Why flat armor, you might ask? Okay, so because we're getting shurikens, which gives us 150% increased armor when we have 5 of them on us. Flat armor is incredibly powerful on this build. Yes, you could go for either flat armor, flat health, increased armor, but the best you can go for is at like flat armor in 2 places, and then on your boots, you might want to get flat health, because at some point armor gets like it's less beneficial to get more armor because you have diminishing returns the higher you go. So according to my quick calculations, 2 rolls of flat armor and 1 roll of health is the best setup. So yeah, so ideally you want the +1 level to shift sealed, because it gives you the +1 level to get that extra point in here for the mana gain on use. So it helps a little bit with your mana. So that's why I went with this. Increased health on the body armor as usual. For the belt, I went with Jungle Queen's Chaps of Folding. This is our best in slot. If you have a 4 LP1, this is the best. But if you don't, feel free to use a bronze belt or a plated belt. It really doesn't matter. It's just because if you happen to have this, this already has up to 10 dexterity, dodge on potion use, physical damage, minion physical damage. I don't actually know. I don't think that actually applies to the explosions for the Ballista. But like if this ever gets nerfed, you might want to switch to like a regular Ballista setup, and physical is going to be very good for you. Um, but yeah, so we go for hybrid health, increased health as usual. The cleanse on element, cleanse all elements on potion use, and mana regen. Mana regen is super important. I am playing currently with 20 in game. I have 21 on the planner with all tier 5 rolls. So yeah, I think 20 is a pretty good spot. If you have a little bit less than 20, you might run out of mana. That's at times. Even at 20, I'm running out of mana at times. So as much mana regen as you possibly can. This also gives us access to a bunch of potions. So we have 16 potions. So since potions are our main way of healing, this is going to be very beneficial for us. For the boots, I went with Solar Room Greaves with Exalted Dexterity, Movement Speed, Hybrid Health, and Health. And this covers up our fire res. This covers our fire res. You could go for, if you want to have even more damage, the Morning Frost Boots. Morning Frost Boots will give you +1 cold damage to attacks and spell per point of dexterity. The only thing is, it's going to be very difficult to cap your physical and cold res with this. And we already have like enough damage as it is to clear stuff very easily. So, I mean, if you want to set up your build so that you have more fizz res and more cold res, you can use this, but keep in mind that it will be hard to cap your res with this. So that is why I chose the Soul Room Greaves. The gloves, Jolra's Obsession, you don't really need this, but this will give you more damage, like quite a bit more damage because of the armor shred. And if you can get 2 LP, you can get dexterity in here. But I think I would go for armor shred first and then dexterity. It gives us also cold, lightning res, and void res, so it's pretty good. For the relic, I went with Melvern's Writ. Oh, so yeah, if so, you don't have to use Jolra's Obsession. You can use like just regular gloves. I would highly suggest using something like a Crusader Gauntlet or an Engraved Gauntlet. For Melvin's Writ, tier 7 level of Ballista. The levels for Ballistas are very important because if you don't have +4 levels, you might not be able to take maybe one of this node or one of that node. So yeah, you want to get at least a +2 to Ballista at the very least. But try to get the +4. So we went for level of Ballista, we went for Dexterity, Endurance, and Fire Res, just to cover up so that we have like our Endurance capped and our Crit Avoidance capped, right? So Endurance, Fire Res, Dex, level of Ballista. This also gives us Dexterity, so that's why it's the best. It's the best relic for us if we can get a good LP Legendary. Although if you cannot, to cover up for the loss of like the minion bow critical strike chance that we're getting here, the flat, you can go for Ancient Coins, or I mean, if you have other ways of capping your crit, you can go for any relic really. Like the Ruby Dice would save you with a Fire Res roll on the suffix. The poison res one would save you a roll of poison res on your idols. So yeah, feel free to play around with this. But this is just like the end game goal setup, basically. For the amulet, we went for Death Rattle. You have two choices here. You can go for Death Rattle, or you can go for Logi's Hunger. So Logi's Hunger would give you, it's a Bone Amulet, Physical Necrotic Res. It gives you plus 3% minion critical strike chance and fire critical strike chance. Not sure if this gives you 6% flat or not, but anyways, why it doesn't matter. It also gives you plus 2 to level fire minion skills. Why it doesn't matter is because we're running Peak of the Mountain, and we already are almost capped. Well, with Peak of the Mountain and 2 idols, with a couple of points in here, we're capped in like critical strike chance. We're 100% crit. So you don't need the extra base, and Death Rattle is 100% more crit multi. It's a lot more damage than plus 2 to skills in here. So yeah, that's why we're going for Death Rattle. So yeah, critical strike multi. I put here tier 7 increased minion damage. You could go for either minion damage or mana regen. I don't recommend going for crit multi on here. The minion damage is huge. It's better value than the tier 7 crit multi. So yeah, whatever you can get here. If you can get more than this amount of LP, I mean, if you get that, you can figure it out. So rings, we go for turquoise rings because they have implicits for minion damage and minion critical strike multiplier. Huge damage boost. We go for tier 7 dexterity, mana regen, health, and endurance. And on this one, I went dexterity, mana regen, crit avoidance, and endurance. So it's to cap our endurance at 60%. It's very important. It's a big, it's much better to use 3 affixes for endurance than, for example, just like stack health everywhere and not have that endurance capped. So it's very important to have that endurance capped at 60%, guys. For the weapon, I went with Eurothrun Strand. If you don't have this bow, you can go for something like a Dreadthorn bow. Would be pretty good for 4% bow crit, 61% bow critical strike multi, and 48 bow damage. So it is a very, very good bow. Probably does more damage, but the Eurothrun Stand gives us cold res, physical res, more mana, the bow damage for your minions, more ballistas. Like it's all good stats for us as well. So if you can get a 4 LP Eurothrun Strand, it's probably better than the Dreadthorns, but Dreadthorn's bow has a lot of damage to it. So, but yeah. We'll go for crit multi, tier 7, tier 5 bow physical damage, minion physical damage, and chance to chill on hit. The minion physical damage here probably doesn't apply to the explosive ballista, but if you ever want to switch between the regular ballista build and the explosive ballista build, then you will already have the bow, and like there's nothing else really that would really benefit us here. So I'd say just go for the increased minion physical damage here if you have a 3 or more LP. But the two most important one will be crit multi and bow physical damage. For our quiver, we went for arrow guard. So we have bow damage as implicit, tier 7 dexterity, minion damage, and like this one has chance to receive a glancing blow when hit, which is huge. 50 armor, 50% increased armor. It is really, really good. If you can, so these are the two most important ones. If you can get something else, try to get resistances so that you can free up slots for maybe more health on your rings or on your relic. For idols, we went for plus flat damage to bow physical damage for ballista with poison res as a suffix, and then bow physical damage for ballista and bow critical strike chance. Just make sure that you are capped on crit. And then the small idols, it's just used because we're using one void blessing here. No, it's because we're using one necrotic blessing here. We have one necrotic idol res. One necrotic res idol. And then the 3 other ones are to cap our physical res because we only have 60 from our bow. if you don't have a good roll on your bow, you can use like something else, like just grab one roll of physical res on a ring or something like that. And for the passives here, in the rogue class, we have a lot in the rogue class. Start out with like getting these 8 points in dexterity, these 5 points for less damage taken while moving, and then cap your get enough points to get in here, and then put enough points to cap your critical strike chance. And afterwards, you come back later on when you're higher level to get more like glancing blow and flat physical damage. In the marksman tree, you grab the dexterity because everything scales with dexterity for our build. You grab the bow physical damage and crit chance. You get the 6 point in concentration. This is going to be to get to here basically. So as long as you have concentration, you have like increased damage, which is pretty good for us. 1 point in here to get to crit strike avoidance and bow crit multiplier. This is it's a very good node that we can get. Here we go for the movement speed. So we get 8 movement speed with this, and we get the dexterity and glancing blow chance. We get a chance to gain Dust Shroud when hit with health. This is very good. As we know, Glancing Blow is another layer of damage mitigation, so it's going to be very good to get tanky because this game is all about surviving. We get a 4 points here just to have enough to go into increased damage while at full health, and the Silver Shroud. So Argent Veil is very good. As you get below 70% health, you'll gain a stack of Silver Shroud, you will dodge the next attack, and you will gain 800 ward. A very good defensive layer. That on top of the Silver Shroud we have with Smoke Bomb. So we have like basically 2 free dodges that get like, it's just really, really good. 1 point in Critical Eye just to get enough to go into Spellbreaker for the increased mana regen mainly. Because we're not inflicting any melee hits. I know this node is currently bugged and it applies a frailty even with stuff that is not melee, but yeah, mainly we go for the mana regen here, and then we go for the critical strike multi, and less damage dealt by non-critical hits. We don't care because we're crit capped, and yeah. So this is the main reason why I decided to go Blade Dancer and not Marksman, because Marksman, if you go on the top of the tree, we get more bow physical damage, but we take increased damage from nearby enemies. We have to shoot we have to actually use our bow to gain sharpshooter stacks to gain damage, and the crit multi as well. As in Blade Dancer has just basically free crit multi without doing anything else. It's just like if we don't crit, we deal less damage, but we will always crit, so it's gonna be good. We have 4 unspent points. These points can be used anywhere that you want. You might want to cap your crit here, cap your crit here maybe. You might want to go for like a little bit of movement speed with concentration. You might want to go like, feel free to use these points wherever you want. You might want to go for like the damage and the haste on hit chance with movement speed. Yeah, basically we have 4 unspent points that you can put wherever you want, and you can decide what you want to do with those.